Comments deserve a lecture of their own. We'll be taking a look at how to make a template for comments and how to submit a comment. I'm still working inside the single template file. Scroll down until you find a section called comments. Right before this, we're going to call the function comments template. This function will look for a template file called comments.php and load it. Let's create that file now. I'm going to move the comments from the single template into the comments template. Back inside the single template, I'm going to wrap the comments template function with a conditional statement. I want to check for two things. The first thing I want to check is to see if the comments are open using the comments open function. The second thing I want to check is if there are already comments for this post using the getCommentsNumber function. If there are already comments, then we'll want to display those even if the comments section is closed. Let's go back to the comments template. I'm going to set up a conditional statement and call the function postPasswordRequired. This function will check to see if this post requires a password value before viewing it and if the current visitor has not inputted that password. If this returns true, then we shouldn't display anything to the user. In this case, I'll just add a return statement like so. You may be wondering, will this really stop the rest of the file from returning? Wouldn't using the exit or die function be better? Well, keep in mind that we're calling this template file using the comments template function. This function includes this file, and so we can use the return statement to end this function early. You'll also notice that I'm not even using the postPasswordRequired function inside the single template. In a way, it would make sense to block the rest of the post from displaying, but we don't have to do that because WordPress already does that for us. The only reason I'm using this function inside the comments template is because the comments template can be used anywhere in our theme. Comments are used everywhere in WordPress, so we want to take into account of those situations as well. Assuming everything is good so far, we can begin displaying the comments and form. I'm going to start with the form. Scroll down to the section that says Comment Form. I'm going to place this code directly inside the div tag with the ID of respond. There is a function variable that will help with generating the form, which is the comment form function. This function has two parameters which are both completely optional. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to this function. Let's look at the developer page for a second. As you can see, like most WordPress functions, this function is heavily documented. This function will generate a form where a user can submit a comment for a post. You are allowed to create your own form, but this function is pluggable. This is a new phrase we're learning here. Anything in WordPress that is pluggable simply means that plugins are allowed to extend the functionality of that bit of code. Developers are allowed to add in their own fields or change the way it looks with plugins. So it's always best to use this function rather than creating a form manually. There are a lot of options we can set here. We won't be defining all parameters. If we were to leave this function as is and view the page, then you'll notice that the form doesn't match the one in our template. This can be fixed easily. Inside the comment form function, I want you to input an array. This array can have a multitude of values and keys, but we'll only be setting a few, which are mostly aesthetics. The first key is the comment field key. This key's value will be the actual input field for the comment body. From the template, I'm going to cut and paste the HTML for the comment body into this key's value like so. Next up is the rest of the fields. The other fields are defined using the fields key. This key's value will be an array of all the fields available in the comments form. There are three, which are the author, email, and URL. All you really need to do is set each of these keys' values to the corresponding HTML in the static template. I'm going to pause this video and do this really quick. Alright, I'm back, and as you can see, I cut and pasted the HTML into each corresponding key. There are two things I want you to notice. The first is that for each label, I actually made the text translatable, which is completely optional, but always good practice. The second is that you should take careful notice of the name of each field. It's important that you assign each of these fields these specific names. This is because we won't be processing the comments. WordPress already takes care of processing and saving comments. WordPress expects these names for each field. We're almost done. There are 3 more keys to set, which are the class submit, label submit, and title reply keys. The class submit key's value should be the CSS classes the submit button uses in the HTML document. I'm going to simply cut and paste like so. The label submit will be a translatable string that says submit comment. The title reply key's value will be leave a span comment span that is also translatable. That should do it. If you haven't already, delete the static comment form. Then refresh the page and you should see something similar to what I see. This may seem like a lot of work, but WordPress handles a lot for us behind the scenes. This function does a lot more than output a form. Let me go over what goes on. First, WordPress checks to see if the user is logged in and can submit comments. It'll also check if comments are open for submission. It'll also take care of submitting the correct post information this comment belongs to. Try submitting a comment if you'd like. Something I should also note is that the form may be different if you are not logged in. I want you to log out of WordPress and check the form. As you can see, WordPress displays these extra fields for logged out users. I'm going to log back in and then go back to the comments. If you wanted to, you could have just written this logic yourself, but that's overcomplicating things. Using this function is much more simpler, cleaner, and efficient. If you wish to customize this form further, then I highly recommend you read up on the documentation to do so. Now it's time to display the comments. Scroll all the way up to the comments list section. Inside the ordered list tag, I want you to delete all of the comments except one. We will be using the single comment as a reference. Then set up a for each loop. WordPress puts all the post comments in a handy little variable called comments. We're going to loop through each element in this array and refer to it as comment. You don't have to worry about tying this all together as WordPress does it for you. It will automatically create the comments variable for you. I'm going to cut and paste that single comment into this loop like so. Just like the loop before, all we have to do is simply replace the static content with template tags. The first template tag for comments is the getAvatar function. Inside the div tag with the class comment-author, replace the image tag and echo out the getAvatar function. This function in general gets the avatar of a user. Usually, we can leave this function like so. However, we're using it inside a loop that's inside of a loop. This makes things confusing for this function. So we have to pass in the comment object itself. WordPress will be able to scan this object for the ID of the user to get the correct avatar. The second parameter would be the size. For this template, the size 60 is perfect. The third parameter is the default image URL if the user doesn't have one. I'm going to pass in an empty string. This will tell WordPress to handle the default image URL. I'm also going to pass in an empty string for the fourth parameter. The value for this must be the text to display inside the alt attribute. I don't want to display anything in the alt text, so I'll leave this empty. The fifth parameter is an array of additional settings. I'm going to pass that in and set the class key. The value of this should be the classes inside the image tag below. Scrolling down, you'll find a div tag with the class comment author. I'm going to replace the static author name with the function comment author. Unlike the previous function, comment-specific functions will only grab its values from the current comment in the loop. This function will output the name of the author of this comment. The next one is the comment_date function, which returns a formatted date when the comment was made. Lastly, we use the function comment_text to return the text made by the user. Nothing much to it, honestly. If we refresh the page, then you'll see the comment we made previously appear. The very last thing we need to do is add comments pagination. You simply call the comments pagination function right after the loop. This next step is completely optional. I don't want to display this part of the template unless there are comments. I'm going to wrap this bit of code inside a conditional statement. I'm going to use the haveComments function to check to see if there are any comments. I'm also going to display the number of comments inside this h3 tag using the comments number function. Make sure you remove the comments text as well. That's it for the comments template. You may be wondering, but what about spam protection? Actually, spam protection is something we can leave to plugin developers. There are dozens of plugins available to block spam, and so we won't bother adding a built-in system ourselves. It would be a bit overkill. All comments are processed through a particular file. If we look at the WordPress installation, you'll see the wp-comments-post.php file inside the root directory. This file will process all comments posted to it. Feel free to check it out. That's it for now. In the next few lectures, we'll finish up the single template.